was our countdown starting there,
It's very quick. It's only 3. I feel like 5 is a better for, going live on a video.
I think I was trained by like Mario Kart that you only get the 3. It's always boop, boop, boop. And then, do you ever play Mario Kart when you were younger?
I did, but sorry, you're a little off on the timing now. I think say something and let's see if you're on my time. Okay, there you go. But yes, I've played many rounds of Mario Kart for sure. We did in college make a drinking game out of Mario Kart.
How does that work?
It's called drinking and driving. And you can't you can't drink while you're driving, so you have to set your libation down while you're driving, but then you have to finish your drink before the race is over.
I see.
So some strategy is like you start with it, and then some are you pause, like if you get ahead, and so, or you get to right to the finish, and then you try to get going at the end. So there's a little strategery.
You've got a thing there. You got a thing going on. I don't want to mess with a good thing, so we're gonna call it good. For those of you out there in the Greek chorus, in the listenerverse, welcome to our weekly office hours. We were off for a couple weeks because of the holiday, but we are back. We are back with a vengeance to take your questions. And because it's been a little bit of time, we actually have a few questions, even with the holidays. We got a nice round even 5, which is wonderful. But we always prioritize the live questions. So drop one into the chat, use the thumbs, use the keyboard, use the implant that you have in your brain to type into your computer, whatever it is that you've got. Throw a question in the chat. Cameron's going to warm it up. And we will, of course, begin with the questions that were submitted in advance. You can always submit a question to jdm.bio. Hit the calendar button. There's a link that you can use to provide your question. A little bit more breathing room than you can get into a comment. But with that having been said, we're going to go straight into some questions for anything startup related. We take all the things startup, from idea to product market fit. And our first question here, if I were to turn to my other monitor, our first question is from B2B SaaS. They're serving personal trainers at big box gyms, LA Fitness, 24-hour fitness, etc. They are live but pre-revenue. And this is their question. They say, we've got 340 trainers using our workout programming and client tracking app. They love it. Way better than the clunky stuff their gyms provide. Here's the catch. Trainers at these chains make $15 to $25 per hour, and most are part-time. When we rolled out paid plans at $29 a month, we got absolutely demolished in our Facebook group. People were genuinely angry. Some saying we were greedy and taking advantage of struggling trainers. One person said, "You're charging me 2 hours of work per month. Now we're afraid to push the paid conversion because the community might turn on us completely." And here comes the question. Help? Question mark. My favorite question. They did provide some more details. The vibes are bad right now. We tried explaining our costs, but that made it worse, considering going full freemium and monetizing gyms instead. But that's a totally different motion. All right. Well, this is, welcome to customer validation the hard way. Sorry that you had to experience that. But Cameron, did you have some thoughts before I dive in?
I think just the overarching thing for me is, from a sequencing standpoint, they kicked the can down the road in terms of actually asking for compensation back, so capturing value. And we often see that leads to then major challenges. Particularly, you've set a kind of a precedent of free, and then you've already delivered, what your core value proposition is, and then now you want to charge them for that same thing that they had for free. and like just psychologically they're like, well, I want more than what that is. And so if they weren't willing to pay for it on the front end, we should have figured that out before we went and doubled down on that element of things. So I think that certainly is a concern for sure, and I recognize where they're at in that process. And so I don't know if it's fully switch your strategy, but I wonder if there's like a kind of putting some urgency on it and like actually testing it. So I think you kind of like put the offer out there, but you haven't like fully said, hey, we're cutting off your account if you don't pay. And so like seeing if that actually leads them to convert or not. So actually like putting the full offer out there, I think is for me the next step. Like I recognize there's been pushback in the Facebook group, but that doesn't mean just as much as we say the say-do gap is that they'll say they won't pay and or whatever, that they're frustrated, like still I think still maybe put the offer in front of them, because if you did create value, maybe there is a group of them that are willing to pay, and what separates them from those that weren't verbally mad at you would be my thoughts.
I agree. And triple underlining this really common mistake that where you, as you said, Cameron, kick the can down the road on pricing, and then you learn the hard way that you might just be on completely the wrong track. And so like this idea of considering going full freemium and then monetizing the gyms instead, but that's a totally different motion. And so right now you have this sort of path dependency where you're heading down a particular path that's entirely based on serving the trainers. But the problem is you never validated it. And so now you're like, okay, well, then we have to change so much in our motion and our features, et cetera, to serve this different customer. When if you had led with pricing at the front end, you probably would have learned that this was the wrong path to go down. And so one of the things I do want to like surface up here, while I agree with you, Cameron, that there's probably a worthy experiment here to see to see if the feedback that you're getting is just people being surprised as opposed to actually turned off by the price. I think those are two different things. But I do want to surface, what we talk about a lot, which is a logical fallacy. It most often comes from gambling, where you start like betting money, and you put some money in, and then your hand's not getting any better, and you're like, well, I've already put all this money in the pot, so let me put some more in. And that is fundamentally just not how math works. Right? The amount that you've already put in the pot does not change your likelihood of succeeding going forward. And so you have to look at each bet with fresh math. Right? What are my chances of winning from this point forward, and how much am I wagering now against what am I likely to win? Because the money you've already put in is for all intents and purposes lost. The only way to get back is to win it, right? So what you want to do now is not say like, well, we've gone this far, let's let's try again. Like, be brutal and pivot and cut your losses and go down a path that is maybe a bit more, has more potential to it than just continuing down the same path for a while. It's just I hate to put it that way, but like, find as rapidly as possible whether or not you're on the right track, and then if you're not, like, cut the bleeding, move on, and go on to something else, right? And by the way, it's called the sunk cost fallacy. It's the name of that logical fallacy. It's called sunk cost fallacy. And so we're all naturally, prone to it, and it's something you got to keep in mind. Is that the sunk costs are by definition sunk. And so what can we wait? Like, what the additional work, the additional time, the additional energy that you're wagering now, is it worth? How does it compare against the odds of you succeeding in the future on this path? So run that experiment, and then move on and learn from this mistake. So before you start building stuff for gyms, go and validate the stuff for gyms and see if you can get some evidence of buying behavior from the gyms before you take that path. So
it's as easy as that. It's just as easy as that.
Just as easy as that. Problem solved. Should we keep fixing the world here, Cameron?
We should. I'm trying to heat up that chat, but would love to maybe just give a verbal warm up. Let's warm that bad boy up. It's a little chilly in the chat, so threw a little fire in there. But let's head to the next one maybe.
Yeah, I know it's been a couple of weeks, and we're at a different day than normal because Cameron and I had a conflict.
It was an experiment.
Sure. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next one. So another B2B SaaS, but this one for notaries doing public loan signings and mobile notary work. I haven't seen a startup in that space in a little while, so welcome. I think it's been a couple of years. All right, they're at the paid pilot stage. They have 21 notaries doing those paid pilots. They're charging $45 per month for each of them. They're using it for appointment scheduling and document tracking. Problem: notaries want us to add a marketplace feature where title companies can find and book them for signings. It makes total sense from their perspective, but if we build that, we're competing with Notary Cafe and SnapDocs, who have thousands of notaries and client relationships we don't have. Do we stay in our lane as a practice management tool or try to become a marketplace, knowing we'll be years behind the competition? Building the marketplace would take 4 to 6 months minimum, and we need to sign up the title company, or sign up the title companies, which neither of us has experience with. So I actually, before I'll let you answer first, I just want to reframe the question a little bit here. So basically what we're asking is that you're giving value to this set of notaries, but one of the values you're not giving to them is deal flow. And that's what they're asking for here is we like your platform, but we want deal flow out of it. So I just kind of wanted that's what customers are asking for. That's really the nut here. And yes, it's a change to your business model, and it's a whole new feature set. You said 4 to 6 months minimum to build, and there's a bunch of new competencies to trying to close the title companies. But all of that is around this feature of trying to get that deal flow. So I just wanted to kind of contextualize that a little bit. I'm sure, Cameron, you have thoughts, so I'll let you go first.
Yeah, so I think it's a good question, and awesome on the paid pilots and having them paid. And so I think, a question we would always ask is what does success at the end of this pilot look like? And is it actually needing to have this marketplace style thing, where the outcomes you promised related to what that looks like would be a concern. But I think the thing for me is, why are they using you now? And are they also using Notary Cafe and SnapDocs in addition to it? And so are you solving a different problem, which is interesting because they're willing to pay you, at least right now from a paid pilot standpoint, related to that. And so one, I think it'd just be to continue to deliver on that pilot, and hopefully you time bounded that so then they actually become true paying customers versus pilot customers that are in this cycle of just always being pilot customers. And so we want to actually convert them into real paying customers going forward. And so that would be kind of the first element of it. The second element is, as you look at this marketplace, I want to just please don't go just building the marketplace. Test this out with your paid pilot customers, putting some sort of offer in front of them, and there should be an additional payment. It's not just an add-on feature at this current price. It should be a next. I don't know if you use tiered or whatever that might be, but it should be a next tranche of offering for that, and putting that not just are you interested in this marketplace feature, but at this particular value, and this is the outcome that they're looking to have based on that. And so proving some sort of demand related to that feature before you go build it. Because at the end of the day, they're paying you right now versus those other things, or they're paying you in addition to those things. And so if you could be all under one umbrella, that might be great. And so they actually, move from one of those other things over, but don't get shiny object syndrome when you're already having paying pilot customers. I continue to see if that's your path to continue to grow in the market as well.
I think you pretty much covered it all, right? So I'll just sort of reframe it or restate it in kind of my own way, but I don't think I have too much new to add. So there's this question of what were they paying for and did they get it, right? So is there something missing that was not promised to, or that was promised to them that they feel that they're not getting. If that's not true, then we might just be having a nice feature request here, but it isn't actually changing your business at all. You can say no to that feature request and be totally fine because they're already paying for this new value that you create. If either that's not true, or in what is more likely, that there's just an additional way for you to capture some new revenue, right? To have your scope increase, this economies of scope, right? So you can encroach on Notary Cafe and SnapDocs's market share simply by having this other feature that makes the notaries like it more. But if this is just a case where the notaries are getting more value from the platform than than anybody else, and like that's gonna probably change that calculus a little bit, because you have to find like what is the value proposition that's unique that you're going to offer to the customers of the Notary Cafe and SnapDocs, the title companies like that are excuse me, that are using them. Are you having a different kind of notary, or is it just another place that they're going to have to go in and search for notaries, or is there something else? So I think there's a lot of exploration to be done there. It's definitely not something that's ready to be built, particularly if you don't have any experience with those title companies. Whatever you're building is going to be a shot in the dark. So I can't emphasize enough the advice to that. We don't even know what to build yet, so let's certainly not build anything. One of the things that you can try if you wanted to was to say like, all right, who are some of these the notaries working with now, and see if you can contact those title companies and manually facilitate some transactions through there, and see if that's something where there's some value. I would have conversations with title companies and do some customer discovery and figure out, are there problems that they're currently having with Notary Cafe and with SnapDocs that you're able to solve, either by the nature of the notaries that you have, or based on some other features that or whatever that they might be missing, and then sort of explore what how likely is it that you can get those companies to move off of Notary Cafe and SnapDocs? Like, what is the switching cost that's associated with that? Because you're going to need to be not one, not two, but at least 3 clicks better than those other ones to get any of the title companies to switch. So,
love it.
Cool. 2 down.
Cool.
All right. Well, we are, for those of you just joining, watching the Traction Lab office hours. This is our weekly, normally Fridays at noon, office hours where we, you can ask us anything that you want related to startups, idea to product market fit. We'll do all the things: some traction, fundraising, staffing, equity, sales, marketing, all the things that are important to an early stage startup that we will attack with science. The thing at the Traction Lab is we bring science to the process of entrepreneurship and innovation. We prioritize your live questions. Drop one in the chat if you've got it. Otherwise, we got questions that were submitted in advance. jdm.bio, calendar button. You can submit a question, get a little bit more breathing room, and you get a little comment section. We have a few more to go through. Let's do it. All right. So moving on a little bit, we've got an AI or machine learning tool. Actually, it's been a few office hours since we've had one. So welcome back. We were getting nothing but AI questions for a while. All right, this is an AI machine learning tool for Etsy sellers that are doing $50,000 to $500,000 per year in revenue. So not tiny Etsy sellers. All right, they've got an MVP in progress, and they say, we are building an AI that analyzes Etsy listings and suggests improvements to titles, tags, photos, descriptions, basically SEO optimization for Etsy. The tech works great. Tested it on 200 shops. Suggestions are solid. But when we talk to sellers about paying for it, they say, I'll just use ChatGPT for free. And they're not wrong, question mark. I love it. I can't figure out if we're building something that AI commoditized before you even launch, or if there's value in making it Etsy specific and easier to use. Thoughts?
I know you have thoughts, so maybe you kick this one off. I've done the last 2.
Sure, I'll take a turn. So a couple things here. There's a broader thing about AI that I want to talk about, and then I want to talk about this. So this idea of commoditized AI is actually really important for a lot of startups to understand. That AI is not a value proposition. It's just not. Boo.
Boo.
Value proposition. It's the quickest way to get eye rolls from anybody in this space who knows what they're talking about, including investors. AI is a tool, and it's a tool like anything else. It's a tool that you can use and leverage in order to provide value that a customer is willing to pay for. But it is the tool to provide the value, not the value in and of itself. And that's a really important distinction to make and understand. Second is related to that is that when we talk about like AI being commoditized, it's becoming much easier to use AI for purposes because the training has gotten so much better, the models are so much better, and it's become a lot easier to get better results out of AI, particularly LLMs, than it used to be. And so if you're just like this wrapper around ChatGPT, that may have been really valuable at like version 3.5, but it's not really very valuable on version 5. So that's not entirely true, but it's for the most part you're starting to get diminishing returns on the wrappers. And so the question for any startup becomes like, what is the unique thing that you're providing? Is it just a UI? Is that it? You're just providing a UI where they don't have to copy and paste prompts, and so you're just a prompt monkey? That's like Wizard of Oz.
That could be a cool company name like MailChimp, but the prompt monkey.
The prompt monkey. It's like like the Wizard of Oz prototyping, but the wizard is not you; it's ChatGPT. That kind of thing. So, and that can be a fine way to test things as long as it's not the long term strategy. Okay. So then, what we're looking for when we ask this question, which you'll get all the time if you're doing an AI startup, which is, are you just a wrapper around ChatGPT? The reason they're asking that question is that we're looking for what is your A, differentiator, B, your way to prevent against the commoditization of this, as well as thirdly, your defensibility against new market entrants or existing market players who have more cash to spend on this, because you're not really doing anything unique, right? Like you have a prompt. Ooh, it's not very interesting. So what is it that you can do with regard to AI? A custom model, custom training, a really sophisticated RAG that you're creating for these companies, which is not something that is really easy to do for the layperson just inside of like the ChatGPT app or something like that. And so what is it that you're doing that is unique, that it cannot just be done with ChatGPT? If the answer is nothing, then I do think that that's a signal that you're not really building anything of intrinsic value. You're building just a novelty that can get obliterated as LLMs expand. So that's the general AI stuff. Bringing this more specific to, I like bringing in this specific relief using Etsy here, then it becomes like, okay, so you're using it to create suggestions. Like, it's actually not clear to me when I read this why they're getting the same results out of ChatGPT. Are they asking like for, hey, help me write a product title suitable for Etsy, and here's my details, and like that's doing as good a job as you? Or are you able to, if they're doing $50,000 to $500,000 per year, that's substantive sales volume from the past, are you able to take the data that they have somewhere in, I don't know how the Etsy platform works, but are you able to take their data from Etsy, from the $500,000 a year in revenue that they're doing, and actually use that to create some insights? Or are you able to get broader data from from other stores by crawling Etsy or by using their API or whatever to create a model of what works really well on Etsy, and then use that? Is there something that you can do or are doing that's beyond what ChatGPT is doing? Your customers are telling you that if you are, they don't see it, and therefore it's not worth paying for. So, I have more questions. I don't have any answers. I just have questions. Like, are you just a wrap around ChatGPT? If you are, pivot or move on, because there's nothing here.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is, even from the question and some of the context provided, it's not super clear, like the core value prop or what they're getting out of it. And I think that then goes back to like, what is the problem that they were searching to solve for, and how are you the solution to that problem, and how is their life better because of that, right? And so thinking through is like, if they could just use ChatGPT, is that like are they aiming for an efficiency thing, or is the outcome better? And that, ultimately, between the two, maybe yours is a small amount more effective, but not enough to like warrant paying you for it? Or is it we're saving them time and you just have a little bit of an edge on the outcome or the output of that time savings? And so, ultimately then like they're not willing to put the resources to it. And so I think going back to like from a sequence standpoint is like, in this customer's journey, what is the problem that they're like searching to solve? And then like, what is the core outcome that they're seeking to have achieved, like once they find this solution? And I think that will then help you understand how you can best position yourself. And then also, is that worth them actually giving you resources for?
Totes.
The goats.
All right. That's 3 of 5 questions. You still got 2 more to get through, but we'll prioritize your live questions about startups and drop those into the chat. I know a weird time after a couple of week hiatus for the holidays. So I know those of you out there are just kind of chilling in the new year, but it doesn't even have to be a detailed question about your startup. If there's just something you want to chat about, get our opinion on, or if you have an opinion on one of the questions that we've asked here, definitely feel free to throw those into the chat. I'll be happy to take them. But in the meantime, those questions submitted in advance at jdm.bio. We got a couple more, so let's rock and roll. All right, this is a B2B SaaS we're back in B2B SaaS land. B2B SaaS for acupuncturists in private practice. They have less than 100,000 ARR, in fact, 54,000 across 78 acupuncture practices. Growth is slow but steady. The weird thing is our best customers, the ones who love us the most, who use the most, refer others, are in California, Oregon, and Washington. We've tried expanding east and it just doesn't work. Acupuncturists in the Midwest and South, they don't respond to outreach, or they trust us, or they try us and churn quickly. Is it cultural? I think it's a cultural thing, question mark. Like acupuncture is more mainstream on the West Coast, question mark. Should we just focus on the geography that works, or is that limiting ourselves unnecessarily, question mark. A little more detail, 85% of our revenue comes from the West Coast states. We've spent money on ads in other regions with terrible results. Terrible. So a couple things. And I will, and we do have a question in the chat that came through, so we'll get to that.
Ooh, nice.
Thanks, JP, for coming through. All right, so a couple things. First is I'm seeing some inconsistencies in the question that are kind of eating at me a little bit. And so like you are reaching out. So I'm curious, like here's my read. So you are having success with these practices on the West Coast. And then when you try to expand east, it's not working. And I originally interpreted that as we're unable to convert them, because you said that when you do outreach, they don't respond, or they try us and they churn. But what I'm hearing later is like we've spent money on ads in the other regions with terrible results. And so to me, those are two different things, and they could be caused by the same thing, but they also could be different things. So I kind of want to check, like, where is the data coming in here? Like, do you have a couple of little data points that don't add up to much, that say that they don't respond, or they try us and they churn? Or like, how strong is the data around that trying and churning? Or is that just like, yeah, there've been a couple of things here and we're maybe overreading that and we're really not getting them to reply at all, which would align with what we're seeing on social media? Because if those two things, like if it's that, if we're just not getting them to reply, then it's like, okay, well, there might be a value proposition thing here. It might be a size of practice issue here. There could be a number of other things that make sense. If they're trying it and churning, and like that is actually a strong data point that we can get them to try it, but then they just churn, that's something completely different. And that could have something to do with culture, but not the culture that you mentioned, because what you said was, acupuncture is just more mainstream on the West Coast. That is true. I'm in California. We love our woo-woo here, so that's definitely true. But not passing judgment, although I am. But that's the culture amongst their customers. But if the practices are actually there, then like whether or not it's mainstream or not isn't going to change what tool those companies are using. Those companies already exist. And so it would be a culture unique to the practices themselves and to the practitioners. For example, it might, this is probably not true, but just to give you an example, it could be that these practice owners in California are more technically savvy than practice owners in Iowa. And so when you target those ones in Iowa, they're just not, they don't like the digital tool thing. Their office is all still analog. And that is a cultural difference. I'm making this up, but that's a cultural difference between those two things, but it doesn't have to do with the practice like type itself. It doesn't have to do with acupuncture culture. It has to do with the technology culture amongst the practice owners. So that's a bunch of things to tease out before, like, really. I'm gonna let you respond, Cameron, before I actually answer the question, because I'm not sure we.
I think just real brief for me is like again, what is the problem that you're solving? Like, you're jumping straight to this cultural component versus, are these practices the same or are they different? And what we mean by that is not that they're like culturally different from like ones in the Midwest and ones in California, but the same size of practice, or they, as you mentioned, JDM, like one might be more analog and one's already digital. And so they're solving a more digital problem. Or is it one's already happy with their practice size and some want to grow, right? Those are very different things in the way that they're looking at finding a solution. And so I think part of the maybe where I'm reading into this, like they try it and they churn, was maybe there was some fit. And if there's an element of them being more analog, and I know we're couching like people, I guess, apparently in the Midwest that are more analog than tech Bay Area. So whatever that means about us, but
coming through.
But say that is the case, was like part of really what I wanted to hit on was like the switching costs that they have of like changing their entire system. Like, if that's not really the main reason they purchased it, then like, oh, well, like I have to go add all these things. I have to redo my processes. I'm pretty happy with where my practice is. I'm going to spend more time trying to get this thing to be more technologically focused than it's worth in terms of the outcome. And so we need to understand what is the root cause of the problem. And it can't just be like, oh, like you're selling software, but it's enabling some sort of outcome for them, and how is their life better because of that. So I wouldn't just pigeonhole it to be like it's a cultural difference. It's understanding who the customer is and what the specific problem you're solving for.
Yeah, well said. Two final things one big final thing I think I want to add on here as well is there's another thing that a thread, like a little story loop that was open that I just want to like grab and pull at in the question. And it was all the way back at the beginning. We're at 54,000 ARR with 78 acupuncture practices. That, by the way, is about $58 a month per practice. Growth is slow but steady. So another question that I really want to probe into is, how good are things on the West Coast? Is it just that that's where you happen to make inroads, but like we're not really growing at a rate that would be expected to indicate that the startup is doing well, and we're just seeing that manifest itself more acutely in the Midwest, where maybe we don't have the network or something like that. So I just wanted I wanted to call that out too. That growth is slow but steady is a little flag for me that I'm seeing that like this might be symptomatic of something larger related to the value proposition that you're offering. So
slow and steady doesn't win the race.
Not this particular race, no. Not the venture capital based game, no. But yeah, so let me make sure we actually answered the question. Should we focus? So the question was, should we focus on the geography that works, or is that limiting ourselves unnecessarily? I think we can't answer that question. We've asked you the questions that we would need to know to sort of piece that out, and to kind of help you think through that. Feel free to provide more detail. Hit us up, DM, email, whatever. We can take that more detail and kind of come back to it next week. But just based on what we have here, we can't answer that question because there's too much data that we're missing, and it sounds like there's some assumptions being made in the question that we're not sure are fair assumptions to make. So, all right. Let's move on to our question from the chat. Welcome to friend of the show, JP. So, whoops, that was it's this one. There we go. All right, this is the actual question. So the question we should be asking as founders, you doing one of three things: one, training a frontier foundation model; two, fine-tuning, adapting existing models; three, building differentiated systems on top of those models. Are those three areas we should be thinking about as we build? So like an understanding of a true customer analysis. Okay, so I think yeah, you're sort of getting here. It doesn't necessarily have to be training a frontier or foundation model, but you need to be having. I'm gonna hide this because it's kind of hold it here. You need to have something that's different than what you can get out of a general LLM, because you can build a short-term business like building a wrapper around an LLM, and like that's fine. It's not a startup. I mean, it's not in our sense of the term, but you could do that. But if you want to have staying power, then you don't want to be competing with an LLM. So the question becomes, how are you different? And you can be different in one way. You could be different by having your own, training your own frontier model. Like that's fine, and it doesn't necessarily have to be even a training your own large language model. You can make use of a large language model and then also have it supplemented with your own set of data that you're using to constantly train and create RAGs and do all that kind of stuff. So like it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to like create an alternative to, to ChatGPT or to Claude, and their models, but it does mean that you have to have something that a general user of ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or whatever else doesn't have access to themselves. And so that could fit under like the fine tuning, adapting of an existing model there. But I think there is more to it than that. And another way to think about it as well is that we like, it's funny how the term AI has evolved in meaning over the past, say, 10 years. So 10 years ago, if anybody said AI, what they meant was machine learning. And now when anyone says AI, they don't mean machine learning. Now they mean an LLM. And so I think we probably want to be a little bit specific when we're talking about AIs, and we just took it in the question as an LLM because they said it was being replaced by ChatGPT, so it's like a fair assumption. But there's lots of different ways to have artificial intelligence looking at a set of data. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that's just based on a large language model. So I just want to call that as well. That's a whole other category of stuff that you can't really replace with ChatGPT. Like you can take a data set at ChatGPT and say, do some analysis on this data, and it will. It'll write some Python code and then execute the Python code and look at the data and do a thing. And that's pretty cool. But what it's doing is creating that graph around that, right? And so if you were to do that on steroids, you wouldn't need ChatGPT anymore. You would just write you would write whatever the equivalent code that it's generating is, and then use that against the data sets. Either the large language model was only used to get to the code, and the code was what you ran on the data that you provided, right? So you wouldn't use that like in production in that case. I just wanted to kind of call that out. And then lastly, the one you mentioned was like building differentiated systems on top of models. So yeah, I think so. That one, I don't have any further comment on that. So I think largely, JP, yeah, I agree with you. Those are some of the ways. I don't know, Cameron, if you have anything to.
No, I think I always kind of go back to, unless of kind of maybe these are specific answers to those questions. I think you tackled those and appreciate that. I think again, it comes back to like, how are you differentiated? But that comes from like, how are the current customers or people you're trying to serve underserved by the existing solution, so the existing LLMs or whatever that might be. And then that's where you're creating this additional offering where you're providing, say, those two different benefits that they can't get from the LLM. And that gives you that staying power going forward because you actually are offering something different and can continue to serve a larger market because of that, versus just kind of like a one and done. And we'd say it's like, don't be a feature on the future roadmap of ChatGPT, be something differentiated, and that's something they would want to acquire because you're hoping take some of their customers that would usually be using what they offer, but you're doing it in a more beneficial way to a set of customers.
One other thing that I'll say on this too is I think the way to think about like bubbling up a little bit from like some of the ways that we talked about differentiating itself. It's less thinking about the AI itself and thinking about what's the value we're creating and charging money for. We're creating value in order to capture value, and what is the value that we're creating? AI again is not a value, so what is the value that we're actually creating? And then once you have that well defined, then ask the question, why aren't they using ChatGPT or insert LLM of choice here to solve that problem, to create that value? And if the answer is they just don't know how, then you don't have a business, right? You're just biding time. If the answer is that they can't do it with ChatGPT, it's not possible to do it with ChatGPT, then great. Like there's obviously a business there because it's a new technological problem. But there's a spectrum there. And so another one might be it's hard to do with ChatGPT. And that's and where you are in that gray area becomes a much more interesting question. So this might be like, well, we could go through a number of our different systems and extract all these data sets and then pull these data sets into ChatGPT, or maybe even have our IT guys, write a script to throw it at Claude API and get some results back and like do the company. We could do all of that, but that's like a lot of work. Then what we're looking at there is actually something that might be interesting, because while it could be solved by a large language model, the problem that you're solving isn't necessarily the part that the LLM can do. The problem that you're solving is that they have all this data in a bunch of different places and they want to consolidate it together, and you can provide a number of conveniences on top of that, as well as probably like data security and a number of other stuff. So I think thinking about why they can't do it right now, or why they aren't doing it right now with ChatGPT, is an interesting question. Cool. Well, you're welcome. And thanks for the comments. We'll have to have you join on video sometime, and we'll geek out about something. All right, we've got one more until another one drops into the chat here. It would not be our office hours if we didn't have a B2C app. So let's do one. A mobile app for parents homeschooling their kids, targeting specifically elementary and middle school. They're at the unpaid pilot stage. Okay, I just want to like pause here. If you're at an unpaid pilot and it's B2C, it's not a pilot. You just gave it away for free. Just want to call that out. So right now you just gave it away for free and are calling it an unpaid pilot. All right. Homeschool curriculum planning and tracking app. 160 families testing it. Parents tell us it's super helpful. It saves them hours of planning time each week. Their kids like the interface. We're getting ready to launch paid plans, and I just realized we have no idea what to charge. Homeschool families are price sensitive. Many homeschool specifically to save money, but they also spend hundreds on curriculum material. Is $9.99 a month too much, too little? We're totally guessing here. How do you figure out pricing when you have no comparable products and your customers have wildly different abilities to pay? Lot to unpack here.
It's like it's Christmas all over again. We're just
we're done.
All these gifts.
Off, baby. I'm gonna get out the box cutter and we're just gonna open this bitch up. All right. So couple things first. Everything we said before about waiting to charge applies here too, right? Because
it does. What? Just kidding.
Yeah, what does?
It always applied.
It's turtles all the way down, or in our case, it's pricing all the way down. So what we have here now is a hodgepodge of 160 families who don't look alike. All they share in common is that there's something that they wanted for free. That's it. And there's some subset of these who may not be able to pay. There's some subset of them who don't want to pay, and hopefully we cross our fingers that there's some subset of them who will pay. But now they're all together, and we don't really know how to differentiate between them or who's in what category or why. If we had started with pricing up front, then we would have known that there's this whole set, let's say, of these 160 families, there's 100 of them who are never going to pay. And so why did we spend time processing feedback, building features, testing with 100 families that are never going to pay us money? So again, can't emphasize enough, like giving away the product for free in hopes of learning something that you might be able to charge later usually ends up in an uncomfortable situation like this. So cautionary tale for that. But in this box, there's a lot of stuff in this box. So First is it's always a red flag when somebody says that their customer is price sensitive. You're talking about $9.99 a month, like, or something like that. Is that too much? Is that too little? I don't know enough about your product to really offer a lot of details there, but they're paying for stuff. They're paying more than $9.99 a month for Netflix. So they're paying for stuff, and they're paying for textbooks, and they're paying for some curriculum materials, and they're paying for experiences, right? Homeschool parents, while they're not paying the private school bill, they are already paying the public school bill through their taxes. So the rest of it, is stuff that they're paying for. So I don't think that they're doing it. Like, I'm going to really question if they're doing it to save money. That doesn't seem quite right to me. There might be some subset of them that want to send their kid to private school or don't want to send their kid to public school, but can't afford, to not do that. And so there's some of those out there, but that's not going to be most of them. So when you say that Spanish is price sensitive, usually what we're indicating is an insecurity on the part of the founder, or two, you're just not creating enough value to warrant paying more for. So since it doesn't sound like you've actually talked to customers about pricing yet. So I'm going to assume that this is just your inference and insecurity coming in there. And then, like, how do you figure out pricing when you have no comparable products and customers have wildly different abilities to pay? So the ability to pay doesn't really enter the picture in here, because what we're talking about is the value that you're creating and how much is that value worth. And that's the first thing. And so you have no comparable products. Well, it's a mobile app. Are these people paying for any other mobile apps? If they're paying for no other mobile apps, then that's not a good sign anyway. If they're paying for some other mobile apps, how much are they paying for those apps? What value are they getting out of them? And that'll give you some understanding of their price sensitivity, because of their actual price sensitivity. Because if they're paying, $10 a month for one other app and it serves a really critical function in their family, that's very different than them paying for 5 apps. They kind of open in one of them once or twice a month, but hey, I really just wanted to use the MyFitnessPal scanner thing, and I don't even log, but once a week. Like, those are two different things, right? They're indicating two different price sensitivities, and so it's pretty important to understand, even just generally, what are the other mobile apps that they're paying for? What are the other tools that they're paying for? Or do they have regular tools that they pay for, even if it's not for homeschooling? What is it that they're paying for in their everyday life? Up to and including something like Netflix too, but the further you get away from something that's analogous to this, then the less impactful or interesting that it is. But that's how you figure out price sensitivity, and how you figure out what to charge, is by understanding what the value is, and then understanding what else they're paying for, what it's costing them, what value are they getting out of this. That they're not getting. Are you saving them time? Are you saving them hours of time? Is it time that they're now able to do something different with their kids? All of that stuff kind of adds up together, and then you can kind of get this picture of it. And then the way you actually test it is by charging them money.
All right. I think I have two quick things I'll add is, with the unpaid pilots, particularly when you're going like direct to the consumer, big challenge. And obviously it's not a pilot in the sense of it, but the way you've kind of structured it is to test on the feasibility, meaning like, do people, like, how does the thing work? And how, they're kind of feeling like they might even be giving you value back by giving you feedback. If you set it up in that way, was like, hey, you get it for free, but give me feedback. But one of the challenges too is, without knowing who the actual paying customer is, that feedback is only as good as them actually going to pay you, because one of the challenges is oftentimes those freeloaders will be like, hey, you should add this feature, you should add this feature, but you still don't know if they're willing to pay for the base set of it, let alone all the additional features that they're recommending on top of it. And so we want to front load that desirability test versus the feasibility. The point that I would kind of make around Josh's thoughts on the problem and their ability to pay, I think, again, oftentimes people always say like, oh, we're selling to students and they don't have money. Well, they're paying for a whole bunch of things otherwise. And so there are resources there. It's just, how are they allocating that budget? And so one of the ways is, how are you quantifying the problem? And so we recognize that you have this, app in a way that you're trying to support these families, but like, what is the current cost to the family without a solution to it? Or they're paying for some sort of solution, but it's not optimal because of X, Y, and Z. And here's the continued impact of what that looks like. Is it that Cameron's getting bad grades because of the curriculum setup, and so we're willing to pay more because this will actually help for that outcome? Or it's we're spending too much time trying to plan things and we don't have time to do other stuff, and so we want to invest in getting that time back as a family or to do other things. Or maybe it's a entrepreneur parent and they want to, that time is money, so the time that they're usually spending doing something, there's an opportunity cost for something else, and so they would be applying it that otherwise. And so the last point I'll make on that is that if you have this really diverse set of people that are trying your solution, you have no clue how to kind of quantify that problem, because for someone that might be a huge pain point and they'd put X dollars to solve it, whereas others wouldn't, because it's not that big of a pain point. And so if we're trying to just do a blanket solution and a blanket price point for all of them, you're likely to undersell to someone who has a big pain point and oversell to those that don't.
Yep. Time to have some customer discovery calls.
Dial in for dollars. Dial in for answers or evidence.
For data.
Dial in for data. That could be a good episode there. Dialing for data.
Well, maybe next week's Traction Lab podcast we'll do dialing for data.
Dialing for data.
Maybe it's too clever. We do often make our podcast titles too clever, and our open rate takes a hit. We like
this is true.
We like cover titles, guys. We like them.
We do indeed.
I think there's an important lesson there, but this is not our time. This is your time, so we won't fix the Traction Lab here today. We'll remain limping on, broken as it is, and yet somehow miraculously still serving founders.
All right. Well, with that.
Well, that brings us to the end of the time that we've got here. For those of you who joined live, thank you so much. Love hanging out with you guys, and thank you for the question, JP. Hopefully next week we're back at our regular time, which is Fridays noon Pacific on YouTube and LinkedIn. We'll kind of get back into rhythm with you guys. You guys always ask great questions, so really looking forward to that. And you can always submit your questions in advancedjdm.io, and to hit the calendar, there's a place to send a more substantive question in advance, as you saw here. A little more breathing room than you get in a comment. So by all means, do that. You can also, if you have something that you want to ask, you can absolutely at me on social media, on TikTok, Instagram, Blue Sky, LinkedIn, wherever you want. Throw me a video with the question, and the Traction Lab will answer the question. So we can do that as well. We're here to serve. We're here to answer whatever burning questions you've got.
Perfect. Well, thanks for a fun session, JDM. Thank you, JP, for the engaging questions. We would love to, bring you on screen sometime and geek out on AI and startups with you. So if you want to, feel free to, you know how to reach me. So we'll dial in a time, but appreciate everyone plugging in. And I was going to say, have a great Friday, because we usually do it on Friday, but have a great rest of your Thursday and a good Friday, and we'll speak soon.
And with that,
all right.